Good afternoon, everyone. This is David Cerns from Haley Marketing, and welcome to today's Lunch with Haley webinar. Today, it is my pleasure to have the opportunity to share with you a presentation that Brad Smith and I did at the beginning of Staffing World last fall. So we were invited to come talk, and the title of the presentation, as you can see on screen, was How Not to Sell Staffing. And it's sort of funny when the two of us got invited to do this because we're both marketing professionals, not sales trainers. And when ASA reached out to us and asked us to talk about this, we thought it'd be a fun challenge to come up with some ideas on how to help the staffing industry improve its approach to selling. But I'll give you a forewarning. We're going to cover some very fundamental truths about sales in the industry. We're going to cover some ideas that are kind of basic in the beginning, and then we're going to move on to some more advanced topics so that hopefully whether you're in your first week of selling in the staffing industry or your 31st year of selling in the staffing industry, you'll take some new ideas home. So Brad, before we jump in and start telling our tale, let's set the stage a little bit. So this presentation actually came from a real life story. Now, we don't get called on all the time by staffing companies, but once in a while we do. And if you're a staffing salesperson in Western New York and you're going to call on Haley Marketing, pretty likely I'm going to take the call. And the reason is I want to see how you sell. So it's fun to listen to these calls, but this story and some really bad acting that's about to come up is a true story of a local salesperson here in Western New York who tried to reach out to me and see if she could get the opportunity to sell to me. So I'm going to protect the name of the salesperson, but for today's sake, we're going to call the salesperson Brad. All right, and so Brad, we'll kind of handle this very much like the call. I picked up the phone and said, "Hi, this is Dave Cerns. How can I help you today?"
Mr. Cerns, great to talk with you. How are you today?
Now, just to let everybody know, we're going to break into and out of a character in this little role play. And how are you today is a very pleasant question. Brad's tone was actually nicer than the real salesperson who called me, who was a little more nervous. But the question of how are you today is an opening question that only two people ask. And pretty much it's telemarketers and my mom. So I knew it wasn't my mom on the phone. And so I'm thinking right away, ugh, telemarketer. So we didn't get very far. In fact, we were less than 10 seconds into the call, and it was already strike one against this poor salesperson. So Brad, let's continue on.
Well, Mr. Cerns, thanks for taking my call. What I'd love to talk about today is to see how Haley Marketing manages its hiring.
What? Wait, how is that even relevant? Now, I didn't say that to the salesperson, but we're not a business that hires a ton of people. We don't use a lot of staffing services. We use some. But the opening question to get my attention, is it relevant to me as a decision maker? Is it relevant to the company I'm in? Is it relevant to the challenges that I'm likely to be having? Is managing, hiring, the attention grabber that pulls me into the conversation? Well, for me, it wasn't, and that was strike two. So this poor lady wasn't doing very well. So then I turned around and asked, I said, well, Brad, I'm not sure that the hiring challenges are that relevant to us, but do you know what we do for a living?
You know what, Mr. Cerns, I don't know exactly what you do for a living. Maybe we could spend the next few minutes kind of just talking about that. Maybe you can tell me what exactly you do.
Yeah, doo-doo was the right description. So that was already strike three. And at that point, I essentially thanked this very nice lady. She was pleasant. I thanked her for the time and asked her to email me some information about her organization because I was also interested in seeing that. And I would have been willing to schedule a follow-up call had they done some staffing that was really relevant to our business. So by the end of the day, nothing had arrived. No follow-up, not even an email, no sales materials, and I actually did want it. So this little badly acted case study was not quite word for word, but almost verbatim the situation that occurred when the salesperson contacted me. And all I could think about was, that last question I asked, do you know what we do? Had this person gone to our website, had they looked and seen just the homepage, spent 3 seconds reading that big headline at the top, at Haley Marketing, we're staffing industry specialists. That little bit of homework, she would have known that we specialize in marketing for the business that she's in. And she probably could ask some very relevant questions. If she had scrolled down the homepage, she would have seen that we work with lots of staffing companies all over the world. And if she had actually clicked on that Contact Us button, there's a section there that says Join Our Team. She could have even seen every job opening that we currently have and maybe skill marketed somebody who'd be appropriate. Brad, what else could she have done?
Well, David, as you mentioned, it's doing your homework ahead of time. It's taking just a few minutes to look at the website. It's taking a few minutes to look at open job opportunities. And then taking a step back and thinking about what you've done, what clients you've worked with in the past that are similar. I think if you can approach.
Oh, and Brad, I think we lost your voice temporarily.
We'll get.
Yeah, there, you're back.
Am I back? All right. Sorry about that. As I was saying, just kind of echoing what you had mentioned, David, I think it makes a ton of sense to do your homework ahead of time. You want to take a look through the potential prospects website. You want to look at their job opportunities. You want to think about what challenges they might be faced with. And then even take another step back and think about the clients that you've worked with in the past that had similar challenges. How did you help them overcome those? What strategies did you use to find good talent? And then present that in a more engaging way. So how I might present that is, Mr. Cerns, how are you today? I see that you serve the temporary staffing industry. As somebody that's calling from a temporary staffing company, I understand firsthand that your clients are probably faced with some talent shortages, and you see that firsthand in your business. I recently worked with another marketing agency who was trying to find a programmer with some very unique skills that they couldn't find on their own. And we were able to find that person and find a great match within just a few days. I'd love to share with you some of the recruiting tools and what we found in the market, and maybe even some competitive data for you. Is that something that you'd maybe be interested in discussing?
Now, that's a great question. And Brad, thanks for sharing that. I mean, even though that's probably long for an introduction, you get the idea. In just the first question that's asked, you want to show the prospect, hey, I understand the industry you're in. I've got relevant experience. I understand the problems you're likely to be facing, and I'm going to offer to do something for you, give you some ideas, some information, a top candidate, something that's instantly going to be valuable to your organization. And what you're really doing in that first call is you're setting up the reason to have the follow-up call. And as we look at today's presentation, the question becomes, what's really the point? What are we trying to do today? As I said at the very beginning, I know a lot of you on this call have tons of staffing sales experience. I know everybody here knows the fundamentals. Yes, I should do research. Yes, I should plan my questions. And I'm assuming that lots of you know more about selling than the two of us do. But still, as an industry, we've got challenges that result in a poor approach to sales. Almost every staffing company I've ever worked with in the last 21 years of providing support to the industry has focused on quantity of sales activities over quality. How many cold calls did you make this week? How many appointments did you go on? We are a metrics-driven business, which is good, but at the same time, we're so focused on quantity, we don't have a great measurement for quality. I'd rather have a sales rep that has 10 meaningful conversations with business owners, with senior HR people about staffing or related challenges than 100 cold calls that become the how are you today kinds of calls. We don't do the essential homework because we're not given the time to do the essential homework. We don't sell the economic value of staffing services because we're focused on transactional filling job orders. We're rewarded for how many job orders did you take. And so that's the point of today's presentation, is we want to get the industry to think about how do we stop selling staffing. And by that I mean we don't stop making sales calls. We don't sell staffing as a service. But, and here comes the controversial thing I'm about to say, our clients don't want to buy staffing. There is nobody that has a pile of cash from the profits they made in 2017 saying, what investments will we make to grow our business in 2018? And the top of the list is, we'll spend more money on staffing services. And when it comes to even discussing staffing services, so many clients either think, oh, I'm happy with my current vendor. Oh, I can do this on my own. Oh, you guys are too expensive. I can't afford staffing services. Or I'm just going to lie to you and say I don't have any hiring needs because I don't want to be interrupted. When we're selling staffing the old school way, we're not doing enough to get people to stop dead in their tracks, pay attention to us, and listen to what we have to say about the value we can offer. We're not capturing attention. We're not generating interest in having a face-to-face appointment. And we need to think about, how do we change that process so that that first conversation becomes more meaningful, so that the buyer is more engaged in what we have to say, so that we're treated as the experts we are in talent-related issues and not as commodity salespeople. So what can we do? Hey, Brad, why don't you kick us off?
Certainly, yeah. So some things that we can talk about, as David mentioned, we want to focus on what our clients' biggest challenges are, our prospects' biggest challenges, not what you can do and not what your services offer. So first and foremost, what do your clients want? Well, they want to get work done. Okay, they want to make sure that they're able to have the talent in the door to get product out the door. They want to be able to service their clients. They want to be able to grow their business. And it all comes back to getting work done. If they can't find the people, if they can't hire the right people, if there's a skills gap, they need a plan in place to fill that gap. Talk about how you've overcome that gap. Talk about how you've helped similar clients get work done. They want to look at lowering labor costs. Every business is looking at running more efficiently. So walk through how using supplemental staffing can drive labor costs down. Walk through how having a core workforce that matches the low points of demand and supplementing with temporary staffing support can help them drive efficiencies to their bottom line. You can educate them on all of these things to build a more strategic and effective and profitable workforce model.
Hey, Brad, before you go on, I want to, sorry for interrupting for a second, but it's making me think to a case study that we had actually read and shared. This was years ago, but it was a hospital that was over in Norway, I think, or it may have been Denmark, that they were having a huge problem with labor cost. And their initial reaction was, hey, let's cut overhead. Let's cut every non-essential person. Let's cut nursing staff, and it will reduce our costs. And what they then discovered is the real cost was that they had reduced utilization of their surgical suites. And that reduced utilization was caused by the fact that doctors spent too much time waiting around for the suites to be prepared. And they actually found that labor costs as an absolute number wasn't as important as labor cost as a percent of revenue. And when they got the organizations to focus on labor cost as a percent of revenue, they found that if they hired people, they actually increased their gross labor cost. Labor cost as a percent of revenue went down because they could bill 6 times more patients, because they could complete 6 times more procedures per day by hiring. And if you think about how many of your clients are coming at you in the staffing industry saying, well, you know, your competitor can provide these people for 50 cents an hour less. But does that really lower their labor costs if you're providing a worker who's 75% an hour more productive, or that you're freeing a productivity gap, a capacity constraint, so that they can get more done? So just wanted to share that story because as you were talking, it came up to me. And so often in our industry, we may be selling lower labor costs by actually getting people to use more labor.
Great point, then, and great story, David. Thanks for sharing that. One of the other challenges that many of your prospects are faced with is employment risk. I don't know if everyone has seen the story yet, but U.S. immigration agents last night just stormed 7-Eleven, 100 stores, and they've arrested 20 people that were working illegally. That's going to lead to heavy fines and levies on the corporation. That is a huge risk. You can speak to that. You can use that as an example. You can walk through E-Verify. You can share tips and best practices to make sure that companies aren't liable for their full-time and temporary staff. Educate the market on those items. Organizations all across the board are looking to focus on sales, service, creating new opportunities. Okay, but there's an opportunity cost when those people are reviewing resumes, when they have empty seats on their staff, when they can't fill a need because of a lack of talent, or they can't fill a need because they simply can't find the time to hire. Okay, you can speak to those opportunity costs. You can walk them through how you can fill their bench of talent so that they never go with unfilled seats. You can talk about your plan to proactively recruit for them, even if they don't have an immediate need right now, so that when they do have a need, you have people that can fill in immediately and hit the ground running. So I think there's a ton of opportunity to help them, present them with ways that you can effectively help their business without selling your services.
And the last one to come up here is really kind of building on what Brad was saying about capturing new opportunities. Think about every one of your clients. They're probably coming off a fairly strong year. They're thinking about continued growth in 2018, and more than likely their biggest barrier to growing is lack of talent. I know I was even talking to a couple of our staffing clients who are so desperate for people, they've actually seen their revenues decline because they have so many job orders they can't fill. So their sales team, their marketing is doing a great job. It's bringing in clients, but they can't find the people, and revenue is going down. And think about your clients and the impact on their business. If they can't hire the people they need, they can't fill in with the temporaries they need, what opportunities have to get pushed by the wayside? And what does that cost to their business, not just in 2018, but in terms of product growth, future competitive advantage, market position, reputation, customer service? All of the areas that are going to drive their long-term success come back to, can they find the right talent when they need it, and do they have the right partners to find that talent?
Terrific. David, just to kind of build on that, I think to be successful in selling staffing, you can't sell staffing. And I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but you need to be a consultant. You need to look at business challenges, and we mentioned it earlier, but you need to do research ahead of time. If I'm that sales rep that called you and had no idea what your current openings were in Haley Marketing Group and what you did for a living, there's no reason for me to continue that conversation. If you can't spend 5 or 10 minutes researching, I'm obviously not an important prospect to you. So before you ever pick up the phone, do that introductory research. Plan out a few introductory questions to gather information. And what you want to make sure you do is make sure that those questions aren't self-serving. So don't start off by talking about what their upcoming hiring needs are in 2018. That's a self-serving question. Talk to them about their business process. Talk to them about where they see growth potential in the coming year. Take some time to look at the current tenure of people on their team. Okay, you might find that they have high rates of turnover in certain areas and long tenured employees in other areas. Speak to them about some of those things. Look at Glassdoor reviews to find out what it's really like working in the organization. Ask some probing questions about how they deliver service or how they deliver product, and maybe any barriers to growth or any headaches or challenges that they're faced with. If you can come to them with these engaging questions, you'll get beyond that sales call and more into a consultative role. I would take a look at their current job openings and compare their pay rates and salary data against what you see in the market. Give them some competitive information. Give them some data that they can use to help overcome their talent challenges. If you can do that, they're going to be more open to having that deeper consultative discussion and open to working with you.
Yeah, Brad, you mentioned those Glassdoor reviews. Maybe think about an executive recruiting firm that I was recently consulting with, and one of the things we were talking about is how to add value for the client. And in addition to providing access to talent and doing the screening that an executive recruiting firm does, that Glassdoor issue, the how is the employer perceived in the marketplace, and if you're Google or your Facebook, you're an employer that everybody wants to work with, it's not such a big deal. But if you're competing for tech talent and you're a lesser known brand, somebody has to help you create and sell your employment brand. And a staffing firm or recruiting firm is such an ideal partner. And so as you think about calling on clients, if you see they don't have great reviews, hey, one of the ways we can help you is strengthening that employment brand. And also, Brad, I love that you mentioned the salary data, because we're seeing so many instances of the end client not having a realistic perception of what they need to pay to get the talent they want. And if you can present that data, not from a perspective of I'm trying to sell you something, but hey, I want to give you some information about what the current wage rates are for these types of people in our market to help you hire better. Whether or not they hire from you, that still helps by getting them to think about raising wages. And if everybody raises wages, it's easier to find talent. All right, let's transition a little bit.
And
go ahead.
David, just building off that too, when you're out there selling and somebody does have a ridiculously low pay rate, don't take that. Don't take that job order. I know it's hard to say no, but if you educate them and you consult with them and they're still not willing to raise that pay rate, you taking that job order, knowing that you're not going to be able to fill it or not being able to deliver on quality, is not going to lead to a good relationship, and it's only going to distract you from those profitable job orders. So make sure that your recruitment resources are focused in the right job orders and stop taking those junk orders.
Yeah, and then that kind of leads to the next area of selling, which is really thinking about, and this picture on screen is designed to illustrate it, how do we help the client see the gap between where they are today and where they want to be? And then how do we position your organization as the partner, the vendor, the solution provider who can get them across that gap? And so when you think about the gap, topics to think about talking about: impact of talent shortages. Brad mentioned it. When they can't fill a job order, what does it mean to their business? What positions are particularly difficult to recruit for in your market? What are the strategies that the most successful companies use? So thinking about talking about the impact of talent shortages, what are unemployment rates for specific skill disciplines in your market or in your industry, and offering people best practices to deal with them is the basis of a conversation that leads to a staffing or recruiting discussion. Another one is the importance of hiring top talent. And again, not to bash those clients who aren't willing to pay market pay rates, but if you think about the difference in performance between a high-performing employee, an average, and a low-performing employee, well, it's dramatic. And you can go Google to find that information more specifically, but top performers can be 25, 50, 100, and in the case of some technical professionals, thousands of % more productive than their peers. So if I'm paying a staffing firm to provide me top candidates and they're 50 cents an hour more, but those candidates are consistently higher caliber than I'm getting from my current vendor, there's an absolute return on that investment. And what I need to do as the staffing professional is educate people on the importance. Intuitively, everybody knows I want to hire great people, but economically, very few companies have done the math to say, well, really, how much more return on investment is there to a high performer? And it doesn't matter if you're talking from the CEO down to the guy filling boxes in the warehouse. Higher performance, even though higher performers may cost a little bit more, higher performance always has a significant positive return on investment. You might look at strategies for driving productivity. Sometimes you can't find people, so maybe there are creative ways to staff that you could bring in, or ways to bring in temps to free key performers to drive productivity. So for example, taking the most productive, most experienced core employees and getting rid of the C&D administrative tasks that you could outsource for them. Or maybe you can accelerate learning by bringing in highly skilled temporaries who have deep expertise in something your client's trying to learn to help them shorten their learning curve. Or maybe it's those new initiatives we were talking about. Instead of having to go 9 months to test that new product or get to product launch, maybe building the right team with contract staffing will allow them to get to that product launch in 4 months. And if you can show them strategies to accelerate things they do in their business, that's another reason to use your services. Brad, I hadn't heard about the 7-Eleven story from last night, but certainly HR management. Anybody on the call today who's in California, you're dealing with some big headaches when it comes to employment law. Same with people in Ontario and Canada. So being on top of the employment law trends and best practices in HR management, or just simply, go home tonight and listen to podcasts of some of the people in the HR world talking about best practices. And then as you're making follow-up calls, share those ideas with the HR managers you're calling on. Share the podcasts you listen to, because those trends in HR management, even though they're not directly related to selling staffing services, they're selling you as a partner. They're selling you as an expert. They're demonstrating you care about what matters to your clients. And they're also illustrating that there is this gap between where the company that you're selling to is today and where they want to be. And then you're going to close that gap by showing them how temporary staffing, temp to hire, direct hire, payrolling, on-site management, implementing your own VMS platform, whatever the solution is, you're going to show them how your workforce solution closes the gap. Likewise, looking at employee retention right now, if you've got market data, it's not just about hiring, it's about retaining people. And you might offer to come into a company and, let me audit your pay rates for you. Let me tell you how much above or below the local market you are. And if you're below, we're going to tell you what you need to do to close the gap. Now, you may not have a staffing need, but if you're below, you're going to have a staffing need. And we want to help you avoid problems, or when you do have turnover, we want to be there for you. Also related to employee retention is, as people have unfilled positions, and particularly those companies who say, hey, I can fill jobs on my own. We have a corporate recruiting team. Well, what's their average time to fill? What is the cost of that position remaining open an extra 2 weeks or 30 days or 2 months? What is the cost of not being able to directly recruit the best talent because their corporate recruiters aren't staffing professionals? They don't make cold calls. They don't get on the phones like the people in this industry do, and they're not going to be able to directly call a competitor and recruit talent out of the competitor's organization. So what's the cost of that open or unfilled position related to that? What's the cost of being understaffed and not being able to get work done as timely as they would like to get it done, or with the level of quality they need, because they just don't have the resources to do it well? And what this whole slide is really about is thinking about topics for that first call. What can you talk about? And we're sort of transitioned now from how not to sell staffing to some strategies for how to sell staffing. And that's really what the remainder of today's presentation is going to be about, is 2 primary strategies. I'm going to talk about one, integrated direct marketing, and Brad's going to talk about the other, content and inbound marketing. So integrated direct marketing. This is about taking marketing, integrating it with your current sales process to make your sales team more effective. It's about thinking about how we're going to strategically go after the businesses that are our ideal prospects. They're the right prospects because of the company size, location, the industry they're in, their approach to staffing or approach to how they do business, meaning are they the kinds of organizations that embrace outsourcing, embrace staffing? Are they organizations that care about quality, or are they mostly price-driven and speed-driven? What you want to do is identify the profile of your best clients, and in those organizations, who are the best decision makers for you to deal with, and then create a marketing and sales integrated process to systematically go after those people so that every great prospect follows this process. Your sales team knows the process to follow. You allocate the time to do the research, you plan the right questions, and you maximize the probability of getting an appointment. And also at the end, to make sure nobody gets lost. And what we find, integrated direct marketing works when you take multiple channels of communication, mail, email, social messaging, primarily probably going to be LinkedIn, but these days might also be Facebook Messenger, might also be texting, the telephone, and even pay-per-click advertising targeting your ideal prospects. You integrate that with multiple ways that your sales team does follow-up. So some of it's on the phone, some of it's via email, some of it's via social. I didn't put it on the list, but in some instances it makes sense to drop by. And then you integrate that with multiple ways for someone to take action, meaning they can call you, they can email you back, they can go to a landing page or a specific page on your website and request information to facilitate the next step in the sales process. And when you integrate all of these things together, we find that our clients will get 2 times to 10 times the response to their outbound sales efforts versus just cold calling. And the reason it works is you're opening up the door with multiple channels of communication. You're figuring out the right message to send to the audience, something that's going to be engaging, attention grabbing, that's going to make people want to talk to you, that's not just a staffing sales pitch. And you're allowing people to respond how they want to respond. Some people love to get on the phone, some people hate it. So you're giving people the way to respond they want to, but you're integrating it with your sales team's efforts so that 100% of your prospects are being followed up with. Now, this diagram is a very old one that we've used for a long time, but it's a simple way to illustrate integrated direct marketing. So this was a map of a direct mail and email campaign we did for a client many years ago. But the diagram is really all I care about sharing with you today. Is it shows things that are in blue boxes are marketing activities. So there's a fast track, a series of direct mail pieces that are integrated with the white diamonds. The white diamonds are the salespeople making calls. And that direct mail has 3 goals. 1, awareness. Do something to jump out, get somebody's attention, whether it's a gift basket you drop off, a FedEx letter that you send, a box you mail, something that people can't miss with a 100% open rate. Then you want to educate people. You can't just sell staffing, as we've talked about. We want to educate people. Why should they talk to you? What problems can you solve? And that leads to positioning, which says when it comes to solving those problems, here's why our organization is the best in the world, or here's why we offer unique solutions that no one else does. And when you've done those things, then you pick up the phone. Then you try to get the appointment because you set the stage for that call. Now, at the end of the call, we're not going to make a sale with everybody. In fact, there's no prospect sitting around waiting for you to call. So at the end of the call, we want to also have a process of ongoing nurturing to regularly stay in touch with people with a systematic process of email, direct mail, telephone calls, reaching out on social media to stay in touch, stay top of mind with every prospect. And you can see even in this diagram, we had added in existing clients as well so that we stay top of mind with everybody, but the salespeople know when to make their follow-up calls. And so when you integrate marketing activities with sales around a focused message, around a targeted audience, you're maximizing your probability of meaningful conversations and, to repeat the statistic, 2 times to 10 times the response when you just tell people, hey, go make 100 cold calls this week. So Brad, let's change gears and talk about content and inbound.
Terrific. Thanks, David. With content and inbound, really, and what we've echoed throughout the presentation is we're looking at ways to position ourselves as experts in the market, position ourselves as a value-added consultant, and attract more people to our online presence where we can get them to take that next step, to schedule an appointment, to have a deeper conversation, to accept our call when we do pick up the phone and instead of making a cold call, do a warm call. So within content and inbound marketing, there's really 3 areas that we're going to look at. First, and at the center of your content and inbound marketing strategy, is creating content. We want to present content in the form of blogs. So on your website, is it easy and simple for people to find valuable information, helpful how-tos, tips and best practices, overcoming many of those challenges that David and I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So blogs can be in the form of quick, hard-hitting information, key takeaways, bulleted information that people can easily consume and find value in. You can present that content in the form of video. Video doesn't have to be professionally shot. You don't need to bring a film crew into your office. You don't need to send a film crew out to your client sites and produce these amazing award-winning productions. Video can be done on your iPhone. It can be done in-house. There are ways to outsource this cost-effectively, but video is a great way to add an interactive component, present content in a way that's easy for people to consume, and kind of show that your organization is a little forward-thinking. It has some appeal, not only to younger audience, but all age demographics. You can look at presenting infographics. An infographic is just a simple way to share data, to share information, to make content a little bit more engaging. You can put together a more in-depth piece into an ebook. We mentioned earlier things like limiting legal risk. Maybe you do an ebook about new laws and regulations, or a hot topic right now is offer acceptance. How can you get people that you send a job offer to accept that offer more regularly? You could do an ebook or a white paper on local market salary data or industry salary data. Great, really compelling content that people want. And they'll give you their name, they'll give you their contact information to get this content. And then newsletters. Newsletters, I think, are a great way to take all of this content that you're promoting and piece that together. Put all of that, all of those blogs, leverage video, leverage infographics, put those into a newsletter that you regularly send to people. So that's really what falls under the creating content area. Once you have this great library and collection of content, we need an active plan to share this content. You could have the best website in the world. You could have the best content in the world. But if nobody's consuming it, really, who cares? So how are we going to get this content in front of more people? Well, the easiest and most cost-effective way to do this on a mass scale is through email marketing. Use a third-party email marketing provider to send a mass mailing out to your entire candidate database, to your entire CRM list, to prospects. As David mentioned in integrated direct marketing, when you're doing cold or warm calls, you're not going to close that lead every single time. In fact, the majority of time, you won't close that lead. But what you do want to get from that person is their permission to email them additional information, add them to your list, add them to a nurture campaign. All this great content that you're developing, you should share with them. It's going to position you as a leader in the market, and it's going to make them more likely to take your next call and have a deeper conversation. You want to make sure that you have an active presence on social media. So once you produce this content, are you sharing it in LinkedIn groups? Are you writing a LinkedIn Pulse article? Are you posting this to local groups, business networking groups? Are you posting this to your Facebook page? Is your entire team posting this to their personal LinkedIn profiles? Use all of these amazing social resources to get that content from the exact right target audience. And it doesn't all have to be organic. You see the last bullet here under sharing content is PPC, pay-per-click marketing. Once you produce this content, actively push that content out to the exact right target audience. Many of our clients will export their prospect database or their CRM list, give us email addresses, and we can upload those into Facebook and target those people with your content. It's a very targeted way to get in front of the right people. We can identify HR managers or hiring authorities within a specific geographic region and target your content to them through paid. And it's extremely cost effective, gets your message in front of the right audience, and gives you a way to reach people that you otherwise wouldn't be able to reach. You can also use this content in drop-offs. So just because this content is housed on your website doesn't mean it has to reside only there. Turn these into great print articles. A desktop published article to give all of your sales reps a folder with different pieces that address different challenges: legal risks, undocumented workers, low pay rates, unable to fill a position. Arm your sales force with all of these great takeaways that show your prospects that you help solve problems. And then, so we've created content, we're sharing this content, we're getting in front of more people. The last item here is driving response. All too often when I see, especially in the staffing industry, I see some great information being shared. Biggest mistake, though, that I see is that many companies are sharing other people's articles. Maybe they're sharing an article from Entrepreneur, or from Fortune Magazine, or from the local newspaper or somewhere else. And that's fine to share on your social outlets. It's fine to share in your email newsletter, but think about what you're doing there. You're driving people to somebody else's website. You're taking them away from your site. So instead of driving response for your organization, you're driving response for someone else. So when you share this content, make sure that it's your content. Make sure that it comes back to your property. Make sure that it comes back to your website. Next, make sure that your website allows people to easily convert. Is there a good call to action? Is there a button to click to submit a form entry? Is there an easy way to contact your local office so that they can talk with somebody in person? Do you have a chatbot on your website that allows them to easily strike up a conversation? Look for all the ways on your website that you can lead people further down that funnel and make it easier for them to do business with you. On your warm or cold calls, reference this information that you produce. Tell people about these great resources. Follow up with them in a personal email with some links to some helpful articles that address the challenges that you just discussed. Make sure that email marketing and social messaging all have a strong call to action, all produce value for the end recipient, and drive people back to your website, back to you, so that you can do business with them instead of someone else. And David, if you want to go to the next slide, what we can do is show you the diagram and really how this process and this cycle works. And I like to refer to it as a cycle because it doesn't really stop. In our cycle, your website is the core. As I mentioned, you don't want to share other people's content. You want to share your content so that people come back to your website. Along the left-hand side, these are all the tools and channels that we can use to generate interest and drive people over to our website. We share content on social media. We send it out through an email newsletter. We can print this out and use it in our direct mail campaigns. We can feature this in advertising. If we're producing great blog posts, there's inherent search engine optimization value. So we're going to rise in search results, and we're going to attract more people that are searching for our services, and we're going to get them to our site. We can use public relations, PR, to drive people to our site. Ideally, what we want to do is get them to the far right there. We want them to take action so that they convert. You make a sale, they request more information, they schedule an appointment, they fill out a form. Okay, but not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody's going to do that, especially on the first visit. So what are we going to do to keep them in the loop? Well, in the bottom right corner, we'll use marketing automation. We'll tag these people when they hit your site. We'll put a cookie on their machine so that they become a sales lead so that you can stay in contact with them. In the center there, we'll serve up what we call remarketing ads. So when somebody hits the Haley Marketing Group website, we tag their machine, and then Haley Marketing ads begin to follow you around the internet. We want to make sure that our name is top of mind. We want to make sure that we're sharing valuable information. We want to make sure that we can help you solve your biggest challenges by providing helpful, valuable content. And remarketing is a great way to get that in front of people. And what remarketing does is it drives traffic back to our website. So those remarketing ads get served up in search engines. They get served up in social media, on Facebook feeds and other websites. All of this is a big cycle. At the left, at the core, is this great content that we're sharing. It's all posted on our website, and it all drives traffic to a key conversion page. So hopefully that diagram is helpful and kind of walks you through the process. We want to make sure that we plug holes in the funnel and make sure that we keep people there so that they lead to deeper conversations and ultimately a sale.
Great, thanks, Brad. Now, just to kind of help everybody wrap up today and think about what you can do as take home. First, on the integrated direct marketing, you want to think about what tools are you using today and how could you be using them more effectively going forward. And some of those tools, direct mail, email, social media, both connecting with people, direct messaging people, using pay-per-click advertising for lead generation to go after a target audience or remarketing to stay in front of a group of people. Event marketing, whether it's job fairs or trade conferences, but having campaigns to make your attendance at those events more effective. And skill marketing. These are all direct marketing tools. And what you want to think about is a process. And the process has an acronym. And I don't have a slide that shows the acronym, so I'm just going to just verbally describe it. The acronym is AIDA, or AIDA. So your direct marketing has to do 4 things. And this AIDA acronym, the first A is for attention. I've got to do something to capture someone's attention. You're not just competing with other staffing companies. You're competing with the 10,000 disruptions they get, every email that comes in, the phone calls that come in, everything buzzing on their phone, and all those little red numbers attracting their attention. You're competing with that for someone's attention. So you need to think about, what can I do to break through the clutter? I mentioned earlier the idea of a FedEx package, a drop-off, a box that gets delivered, but something that instantly breaks through the clutter. Then the second letter, the I, is interest. And interest isn't going to be about buying staffing service. Interest comes from solving problems. And people, human beings, are naturally attracted to problems. That's why the nightly news is all negative stories. If it was all happy stories, which there are many more of in the world than negative stories, we wouldn't watch. But we're attracted to negative stories. So when you're trying to get someone's interest, think about the problems they face in their industry. They can be people-related problems, but think about the implications. What's the cost of those people-related problems? What are the issues that your clients may not even be aware of? Because that's the things that will generate interest. And we talked about a lot of topics earlier that you might use to generate interest. So I use my attention grabber to get you to pay attention to some marketing piece. The marketing piece itself is going to be that interest grabber. And then that drives desire. And desire means a reason I want to take a next step. I want to go to a web page and download some valuable information. I want to schedule a call with you. I want to respond to your email. It's a desire to take action because you've sold me on the interest area and you've convinced me, hey, you're somebody I want to talk to. And if you're in sales, your first job is not to sell staffing. It's to sell the person on wanting to talk to you. It's to make them want to invest 5 to 10 minutes of their time for that initial conversation. And so you're trying to create that desire to talk to you. And the last A in AIDA is action. What can you do to make it easy for people to take action? And that's giving them multiple ways to respond. That's the landing page on your website. That's the direct click from social media or from your pay-per-click ads. That is the phone call they can make if they prefer to talk to you on the phone, or they can email you or contact you via text and chat with you. Whatever it is, you're trying to give people the way to respond so they can respond in the manner they prefer. And again, that AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action, is how you use all of these tools. Look at your own sales process after you get off today's webinar and say, what could we do before we make a sales call to implement AIDA? What can we do during the call to elevate the level of interest and create desire in a follow-up conversation? What can we do post-call to stay top of mind, to sustain interest until that organization has a hiring need, and to keep them engaged with our firm and strengthen our positioning? And so if you do all of these things, that's the secret to implementing the integrated direct marketing. How about the content and inbound, Brad?
Terrific. So content and inbound really is, as we mentioned, about adding value to the equation. And I want you to take a look at your website after this call. If your website is a glorified brochure, so what I mean by that is you're talking about your company, you have a list of the services you offer and the industries that you recruit for, and nothing else, you're losing out on business. So make sure that you add good quality content to your site. It's going to give people a reason to pick up the phone and talk with you. It's going to give them a reason to come back to your site and do business with you, and it's going to build trust. And you do that through blogs. So add good quality information consistently to your site. You can do that through rich media. So under rich media, I would think about things like video. What can we do with video to build a personality for our company, add value, solve a problem. You could do that through infographics, so rich presenting information in just a nice graphical format. You can even do that through podcasts. David mentioned podcasts earlier. Great way to present content in a fun and engaging way. And a little plug here, we have an amazing podcast that we've launched called Secrets to Staffing Success that introduces some leaders in the staffing industry and how they're successful. So you could do something in your local market that talks about the local employment industry, that talks about hiring trends and best practices, that gives tips on interviewing and retention and other best practices related to HR. And again, position yourself as an expert. Content and inbound marketing is also about social sharing and email nurturing. So once you have this content, again, look for ways to share that. Make sure that you're active on social. Make sure that you're targeting the right audiences. Make sure that you're presenting content in a way that's easy to consume across all these platforms. Integrate pay-per-click marketing and paid content promotion into your plan. There's this fallacy that social media is free, and at its base, yes, it's free, but if you put a little paid promotion behind it, your reach is going to be exponential, and you're going to really be able to hone in and target the exact right audience. I can target HR professionals within a specific set of companies in a specific geographic region, and I can do this very cost effectively. I can upload a list of email addresses that I want to target. Facebook will cross-reference those against their database, and we can show ads just to those people. But many staffing companies aren't leveraging this tool. Very effective, cost-effective, and a great way to get your message, your brand, and your position in front of the right people. You can look at webinars and speaking. Haley Marketing, the team here, does a lot of speaking at industry conferences, and we got there because of sharing great information. We got there by taking blog articles and content that we've written and posting it on sites like ASA Central and Staffing Stream and getting republished. That builds up a personal brand, it builds up a company brand, and gets you the opportunity to present on webinars and present as a speaker. If you can begin speaking at associations, trade associations, business associations, chambers of commerce, there's an inherent value there. People will look at you as a consultant right off the bat. You'll have deeper conversations and more fruitful conversations. And then David mentioned it earlier, and I'm going to reiterate here, landing pages. Think about where you are taking people, especially if you're doing any type of paid promotion. If you're just taking them back to your homepage, you're going to lose that traffic. So custom tailor specific landing pages that have strong calls to action. Make sure every page on your site has a clear, defined call to action. What step do you want people to take next from that page? Make sure it's clear, it's easy, and you'll see more conversions because of it.
Great, thanks, Brad. All right, and we just have one more slide, just kind of wrap it up. What does today have been all about? It's about thinking about how you sell. Now, maybe you're not doing the things from our really poorly acted role play at the beginning. Maybe you're not asking very basic questions, but are you doing quantity over quality? Do your salespeople have the time to do a little research? Do you plan questions based not around staffing issues, but based around items of interest to the prospect, issues in their industry, problems they're likely to have, things that will capture their imagination? First, when we talk sometimes that AIDA model, we talk about it as first getting eyeball share, getting them to see something, and then getting mind share, getting them to think about something, and then you can drive them to want to do something, the action. The reason we're talking about having the integrated direct marketing and the contents and inbound marketing and putting together a more systematic approach to selling staffing services is to help you differentiate yourself. There's 17,000 companies in the staffing industry, most of which are selling with very similar means, sending messages that are very similar. So you want to think about, what can we stand for? What can we be known for? What is the content we're going to be an expert on? What is the position we want to hold in the market? What problems do we want to be known for solving? And you build your content marketing, you build your direct marketing around that positioning, around those problems, around those areas of interest to your clients, your prospects, and in today's market, around the candidates that you want to have relationships with. And when you do these things and you integrate them with your sales process, you will get dramatically more appointments. You'll have more meaningful sales conversations. You'll have less margin pressure. And you're going to close more sales, and you're going to make a lot more money. So that said, we are at the end. Brad, there have been a few questions that have come in. Let me kind of address them to the two of us. So one of the first questions was about the integrated direct marketing, and is it the same as account-based marketing? And no, they're sort of complementary things. So integrated direct marketing is about integrating marketing activities with how you sell. Account-based marketing is more of looking at an account and looking at all the relationships you might have in that account and planning strategies for each type of relationship. So what's my C-suite strategy? What's my HR strategy? What's my hiring manager strategy? What's my frontline supervisor strategy? It's developing personas of all those audiences and thinking about creating your direct marketing, creating your content marketing to match those different personas. So they're very complementary. If I have an organization I want to break into, I want integrated direct, and if it's a bigger organization, I want account-based marketing because I want different types of integrated direct, or I want to tweak my campaign depending on the audience. Brad, one that comes up I'll ask you about was where do you put your calls to action? The question that came in, what or where is the call to action in your introduction letter? Now, I don't want to assume it's an introduction letter, but where are some of the most effective ways you found to put that initial call to action?
Well, I think it really depends on what page on a website you're talking about. Let's take a blog, for example, because we talked a lot about blogging. Where I really want that call to action is either in the sidebar, in a pop-up widget that maybe slides in after someone has been on the website for a few seconds, and also at the bottom of a post. And at the bottom of a post, I like a strong text call to action. So in the text copy itself, talk about what next step should be and give them a compelling reason to reach out. But then I also like a graphic banner at the bottom that talks about and makes it simple and easy and clear that, hey, click this button and we're going to take you to a form and you're going to be able to take that next step. So I like it in several different places.
Yeah, for direct marketing, I feel the same way. If I'm writing a sales letter or an email, I actually want the call to action both upfront and repeated at the end. In a traditional sales letter, print letter, the first thing people read is the PS. So I want my call to action in the PS, which is kind of strange that we start at the bottom, but that's where people look at first. Then I want, in the sales letter, I may not open a printed sales letter with the call to action. That's probably going to be in my second or third paragraph. In an email, though, I'm doing it as a text email that's more like a personal note. My call to action is going to come right after that introductory statement. If it's a graphic email that's got the HTML and it's got pretty pictures in it, the first graphic is going to have the call to action right at the top so that people on their phone or on their desktop, they can take action right away. So it's different places in different forms of direct marketing, but it is repeated throughout the piece. We have had a bunch of people ask, are we going to make the slides available? And is this being recorded? We record every Lunch with Haley webinar, and if you've never been to our lunchwithhaley.com website, go to lunchwithhaley.com because we keep recordings of all of our webinars. I believe there's now 75 hours of recorded free training. There's no cost to access any of it. It actually all can be used for American Staffing Association passive education credit, so you could meet your ASA requirements just from going to Haley Marketing's Lunch with Haley website, but it is a separate website. This webinar will be added to that website by early next week. All right, a couple other questions. Brad, I'll ask you, how would you introduce yourself to a new prospective client if you were a new staffing agency?
Okay, so new staffing agency. One, I'd want to think about the rationale and the positioning for reaching out. So, what as a new staffing agency, what are you going to do different, better? What service are you going to deliver more efficiently to that organization that's going to actually get them to take action? So in many cases, you're going to be reaching out to companies that maybe don't use staffing, so you're going to have to educate them on the value of staffing, or they're working with an existing provider. Why would they take the risk of switching to somebody else, especially someone new? So I would look at compelling reasons to work with the organization. Maybe you have deep knowledge of that industry. Maybe you've come out of that industry and you come to things with a different perspective. Maybe you understand their business more intimately and can provide better talent because of that. So I think really it starts with your key differentiator and your positioning message, and then builds from there. The other thing that I would look at doing is surrounding those people on as many different channels as possible with that key point of differentiation. If you just cold call, and there's no background about your organization, they've never heard of you, there's no name recognition, they're not very likely to take that call. So I think it's consistently getting your positioning message in front of them and consistently driving value before you pick up the phone.
Yeah, the other thing,
David, anything to add?
I would add one thing, and that's I would start small. A lot of times people want to take a shotgun out and try to hit everybody. And what Brad said, if you know your value, you know your target client, you have specific expertise where you really are, even as a new guy in town, the ideal staffing partner for a specific type of firm, target that firm but go deep. Go to multiple contacts, show them why you're the best, and then let persistence win. Lots of repeated communication, not lots of repeated selling, but lots of repeated communication to nurture relationships, add value, show them why you're the right fit, because as a startup, you don't need 100 new clients. You need that first one. You need 2, you need 3. And the more effort you put on to a smaller list, the more likely you're going to be than when you take out the shotgun and fire it at everybody. Next question, have you executed incentive-based marketing, like providing a gift card for answering a survey? And if so, have we seen it to be effective? We've done lots of things with offers. And in fact, if you go to our website and go to the ebooks page and you download our marketing best practices guide, there's a section in there just on creating staffing offers. It's kind of fun and silly because it was based on a list of about 70 offers that weren't written for the staffing industry, and we adapted them all to staffing. But the answer on incentives is it tends to work when the incentive has a direct benefit for the person who you want to respond, not the organization as a whole. So if I give you $100 off your next temporary help order, that does nothing to help the HR manager, but maybe it helps a small business owner. But if I give you a $100 gift card to Target, that helps the person placing the order. Now, you probably can't do that because they'd consider it a bribe, but we have seen some effectiveness when the incentive benefits the recipient. But by and large, cash-based, those kinds of incentives don't have a lot of impact in staffing. HR professionals, probably the majority of the calls, they're hungry for good information, and some of the best offers are built around information that HR doesn't have or would have a hard time collecting on their own, something that's not easily to find elsewhere. This next one's a challenging question, Brad, and we've dealt with it a couple of times, but how would you make all this marketing integrated and content and inbound more effective when you're dealing with MSPs and you're not directly filling the end client role? Brad, I'll let you attack the MSP side first, and then I can add in.
Yeah, thanks a lot, David. It is a challenging one, and that's why I joked there, thanks a lot. But I think a lot of it is going to tie back to case studies and how successful you've been with other MSPs and tracking that data, looking at submission to fill ratios and things like that, and coming back with very specific data on how successful you were working with other MSPs. The other variable there, though, is on the recruiting side. So in order to be successful, a lot of times it's kind of a speed game, right? How quickly and how effectively can you submit and match good talent there. So on the recruiting side, I would use inbound marketing as a way to position yourself as a top employer, position yourself as presenting opportunities that you have a hard time finding elsewhere, and positioning yourself as a best place to work. So those are a few strategies that I would use. David, anything to add?
Yeah, a couple things. If the MSP allows you to talk to the hiring managers, I'd still try to build relationships with the hiring managers. Sometimes that's allowed, sometimes it's precluded, and I do that through direct marketing, not necessarily to sell, but to information gather, to build relationships, to find out what kinds of candidates they're most likely to accept, to find out what qualities are most important in your submissions so that you're sending the people they're more likely to accept. I would also try to develop relationships with the MSP program managers. And again, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. If you're dealing with one of the large global MSP organizations, and we did have a question come in about what's an MSP, the master service provider who manages staffing relationships for an employer and may work with dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of staffing companies. I would still try to nurture a relationship with those program managers because they're not going to bend the rules of the VMS system used for submissions, but having a preferred relationship is going to get you into more of their accounts. It's going to get you the opportunity to expand your reach and may get you some insights into how to best work with them. And ultimately, the MSP wants to help their client save money. They want to look good to their client, and they want staffing partners that are truly partners. And you want to position yourself through direct marketing and content and inbound marketing to the appropriate program managers that we can be that kind of a partner. All right, well, we are now just a little bit after 3 o'clock, so I don't want to keep anybody any longer. One last thing to wrap up today. Thank you from Brad and I to everybody for being part of today's webinar. We have a couple of additional webinars coming up soon. So next Tuesday, in fact, we talked about PPC. There's some really amazing new things that you can do with Google and social PPC in the staffing industry, particularly for recruiting. And our social media team actually spent the last quarter of 2017 working on some really cool new strategies, and we're going to be showing them off for the first time in a product demo webinar next Tuesday, January the 16th. So if you want to see specifically services that we offer, check out this webinar. If you just want to learn a little bit more about PPC and staffing, check it out as well. And our next Lunch with Haley, since recruiting is such a big issue, we're going to look at staffing websites and talent engagement. And we've seen some interesting case studies recently about websites and ATS products killing the candidate relationship and lowering fill rates. And we're going to share some of the things we've seen that you shouldn't do and some of the strategies for driving more ROI from your website and getting more response from candidates to get them to your website and, more importantly, get them applying to your job. And that's going to be on Thursday, February 15th. So from all of us at Haley Marketing, thank you very much for being part of today's Lunch with Haley webinar, and we hope we'll see you again in the coming weeks.